The rules of this challenge are simple. We'll randomly select building materials using a custom-designed Terraria wiring system. Each chest selected will contain a limited selection of materials that we can take with us onto the final challenge. Once our materials have been chosen, we'll spend a short time in the paint booth where we can experiment with our materials and select 3 colors of paint to bring with us to the final build. In the final part of the challenge, we'll build something awesome in a new Terraria world using only the materials we've been given. Welcome to the party, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with another episode of our Let's Build Roulette challenge, and we're starting things off once again with the furniture round. So this round we'll be selecting 2 chests at random, and we'll be allowed to use every item that we find inside. In today's build, we're going to be using the wooden furniture set and the palmwood furniture set. In the block selection round, we'll be selecting 3 chests at random, and we'll be allowed to take 2 different blocks from inside each chest. Let's zip ahead here and take a look to see which items, which blocks we'll be using today. You can take a look on screen now to see all of our choices for today's build. Ultimately, we decided to make use of the hellstone brick and cactus from the first chest, Boreal wood and orichalcomore from the second, and finally gray brick and ebonstone brick from the third. The wall selection round works exactly like the block round. We'll be selecting 3 chests at random, and we'll be allowed to take 2 different wall types from inside of each of those chests. We'll fire up our randomizer here and see which ones we'll be choosing from for today's build. Once again, you can take a look on screen here to see all of our options for today. Ultimately, we settled on ebenwood fence, snowflake wallpaper, mudstone brick, snow brick, yellow stucco, and boreal wood for our walls. Our final round of randomization is a decoration round. We'll only be selecting 1 chest at random here, but we will be allowed to take 3 different items from inside. You can take a look here and see all of the choices that we have in this chest. There's loads of different options. Ultimately, for today's build, we decided to take the Hallows Eve painting, the lamppost, and the Storm Diver banner. Let's zip ahead to the paint booth and see what colors of paint we end up with. After our block and wall selection rounds, I had in mind some sort of wizard tower for this build. I also wanted to sort of break away from my typical, vibrant oversaturated style and try something a little bit more down to earth into the typical Terraria style with lots of wood and typical sorts of colors to match our furniture sets. So ultimately we took white paint, sky blue paint, and brown paint for our final build. So to start this one off, we pulled 2 furniture sets that are sort of lackluster on their own. The wooden furniture set and the palmwood set don't really stand out in the crowd at all. So I decided this would be a good opportunity to sort of build in, like I said, a more traditional Terraria style wooden fantasy cottage sort of thing. With all the purples and blues in our material selections, I thought it might make sense to do a wizard tower. And that was sort of the impression I was under at this point in the build, that we're going to build some sort of tower on top of this sort of framing underneath the building. Ultimately, we did end up sort of changing that plan once we got into the actual build here. And I decided to kind of just break away from my normal pattern of building as well here and use this as a really experimental build for myself. Ultimately, we sort of shaped out the outside of the building first, which is unusual for my building style. I like to sort of do small bits to start rather than building the silhouette first. So you can see we ended up playing with a few different roofing styles and a few different sort of just overall shapes. We did end up with sort of an overall boxy silhouette, but we tried to offset that with interesting details on the inside. I wasn't sure where we were going to put our painting just yet, so I had it hanging up there at the top. But ultimately we ended up taking that out in favor of a large glass window. Overall, I think this build turned out pretty good, and we finished off the first floor here to close out the build. and added a few of those decorations from our furniture sets. So let's zip ahead and see how it turned out. So here is our final build for the 5th episode of Let's Build Roulette. And this one turned out to be kind of an interesting experience. Definitely didn't turn out to be what I thought it would be after our selection rounds. Like I was saying, I thought maybe we're going to go sort of like a wizard tower direction, but we ended up sort of going with a more traditional Terraria style build. So lots of wood, lots of sort of brick textures and things like that. And yeah, it turned out to be kind of strange. This definitely, it's not my favorite build in terms of aesthetics, but it really was an interesting one for me to build because it sort of pushed me outside of my normal comfort zone as far as how I like to build things in Terraria. The whole purpose of this challenge is basically just to, kind of push you outside of what you're familiar with, make you use materials you're not accustomed to, and sort of expand your knowledge of Terraria's, building options. And I wanted to really use that all throughout this build, and use this as a chance to really push myself outside of my normal style. Usually when I'm building with no restrictions, I like to use really high contrast colors, very vibrant and saturated sorts of palettes, but this was a fun one, and it worked well with our furniture set to make it sort of a more muted color scheme. The blue of the roof and the light purple of our slab foundation there turned out looking really nice. The wood accents throughout the build sort of just complement everything together. We got to use a little bit of our orichalcomore on the cross beams under the bracing of the floors. And I actually really like the look of that. It has sort of a bit of a sparkly effect on it that I think looks really, really cool on this build. You can see we left some cracks in our glass windows to give the illusion of like glass panes or something like that, just to give it a little bit more detail up there at the top. But yeah, I think this is pretty much going to wrap it up. Like I said, I really like this build, and I think it was a lot of fun for me to build something I'm not particularly comfortable building. So I think that's going to pretty much wrap it up for today's build. Like I said, this was a lot of fun, and I'm glad you guys came along to see the journey with me here. So I want to thank everybody for watching once again, and we will see you all next time.